Good evening and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns Hour here on YouTube and DLive. My name is Tom Luongo. I hope you're all having a great day. We've got a lot to talk about tonight. I want to talk about, well, the latest bit of provocation that we have that needs to be dealt with, which is, of course, Iran seizing a UK flagged oil carrier. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what I think how that works in relation to Brexit, as well as some other issues as well. So I think there's a lot to talk about here. There's a lot to unpack. Nothing really new, but something kind of interesting, because it seems to me that Iran is quite serious about letting everybody know that they're not going to be intimidated out of their global position in the world. And I'm going to try to explain why. Before we do so, let's get all the niceties out of the way. You can find links in the description for all the stuff that I'm going to mention tonight in the show notes down below. You can also find links to signing up for my Patreon, to my blog, donating to the stream, and all of that happy jazz. I know you guys do so on a regular basis, and I absolutely do appreciate all of it. Also, don't forget that there's links down below, referral links down for installing the Brave browser, where you can get paid in crypto to watch to break the back of Google's ad network, which is really important, and the coming challenge from both Facebook and Amazon. Both of these things need to be dealt with. All right, so Star Troopers asking, before I even get started, what in the hell is Iran doing? Exactly what they need to do, and I'll explain why. So apparently, there's no apparently about it, Iran has confirmed this, that they seized the Stena Impero oil tanker as it was passing through the Strait of Hormuz earlier today. Why? Well, Iran has given out 3 violations of international or of maritime law. Apparently, the tanker shut off its GPS while passing through the strait. And maybe in an attempt to kind of slip through, because Iran had told the Brits that if they tried to sail oil tankers into the straits, they would be detained. So they tried to shutting off the GPS thing to stop that from happening. I've watched the Moon of Alabama's got a great post on all of this, as does Zero Hedge. And all of that shows, and even the publicly available telemetry from the ship, that it turned south and then was corralled and sent back north, corralled by the Iranians and corralled. Now, why have they done this? Well, because they have to. They don't really have a choice here. The Brits, in an obvious provocation at the beginning of the month, went out of their way to grab the Grace 1 oil tanker under the pretense that it was in Gibraltar waters, apparently after it had already asked for safe harbor to resupply. And then once it was in Gibraltar waters, according to the Brits, there are other reports say that they were boarded in international waters, and the Brits are just lying. And, like, the Brits never lie about anything. The British government never lies about anything as when it comes to international politics. And under Theresa May, that's all they do. So, and especially under Theresa May, they have done nothing but play the most egregious games, from Russiagate to the Skripal incident to this and many others. The Brits, first under Boris Johnson as foreign secretary, and worse under Jeremy Hunt. It's only gotten worse. How much the British deep state is obviously acting in a way in order to foment unrest across Europe, and to do the bidding of trying to keep the United States and Russia at odds, as well as the United States and everybody else at odds. Anywhere where it's possible to maintain the current geopolitical status quo, which is that NATO will expand up to Russia's border. The operation to destroy the Middle East, invade 7 countries or 7 countries in 5 years, that whole original plan. None of that has changed. That whole operation that was discussed, years ago. That's all being protected. That's what the Brits are, the guys doing this work. They're the ones who refuse to give up any kind of position here. And you just have to realize that it's very obvious that as things move along, it's going to be the Brits that do all the provocations, while the United States now has to back off. While Trump is trying to back off and bring some kind of sanity to the foreign policy, and I really do believe this. I think the more I read the tea leaves here, the more I watch this play out, it's very obvious that Trump is looking for ways out of this mess that he's in. Not happy about the mess that he's in. He's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to open up diplomatic channels with Iran. To his credit, he put Rand Paul on the job earlier in the week. And Iran's not stupid here. They know the game, which is if they're going to react to these provocations, they're going to do so legally under international law. The Russians have been doing this, the Chinese have been doing this, and the Iranians have been doing this. Watch the way Iran is handling this. They're doing it in such a way as to say, this ship was in breach of international maritime law, and therefore we had a right to do this. In the same way that the Russians use that, the same cover of international law and maritime law to detain the Ukrainian ships when they were approaching the Kerch Strait last November. The Chinese have been doing the same thing. So when you watch these things play out, watch the way the justification is going. Putin has made an incredibly strong point over and over and over again that they're legally in Syria under international law. They were legally invited there by the Syrian Authority. Everybody else who's in Syria, other than Iran, who was also invited in, is there illegally. And legality doesn't matter per se while it's all going on, because obviously at this point, he who has the guns makes the rules, right? That's the way the United States has been acting. They've been acting very lawlessly. So have the Brits and so have the French in Syria. Well, it's the same thing with these oil tanker incidents as well. Understand that because of the mismatch in quote unquote in military power and in world position, the best way for these demonized countries to maintain their position is to always act legally under the color of the law. It is the best way. So Putin makes this point all the time, and he's obviously teaching the Iranians how to do the same thing. Zarif, someone pointed out on either our Slack channel or on Moon of Alabama's comment thread this afternoon that Zarif is a very impressive guy, the Iranian foreign minister. Reminds him of Lavrov, Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister, in that he's unfailingly polite. He knows his, he knows his job and refuses to rise to the bait, and is unfailingly a gentleman at all times. And that's going to be the key in the end when this is all said and done. What Iran, Russia, China, and the rest are doing, Syria, what they've been doing. I've been saying this on and off for a long time now. I haven't made this point in a long time, but I used to make it regularly. Is they're creating a dossier, a list of incidents over the course of years, building a firm case and international relations and international bodies of the lawlessness with which the United States and the Brits and the French and the rest of and even to a lesser extent now the Germans have been conducting themselves on the world stage, so that when things change, when the situations need to resolve themselves, they will have all of this on their side as negotiating points to go, look, we know you shot down MH17. We know you backed the White Helmets to create false flag chemical attacks in Idlib. We know you shot down our Eland plane. We know you did all of these things. We know this. We know all of these things. And we can document them. And we were right in how we took legal means by which to respond to them at every turn. It's going to cost the United States and the Brits, and to a lesser extent the French, when all this is said and done. These are war crimes. You can call them war crimes if you want, but they're gonna be negotiating points. And there was the point I made the night Trump launched those tomahawks in response to the chemical weapons attack at Conshohocken. When he made that decision, I could see all of this playing out. And said, you don't understand. Everybody was like, oh, this is good for him tactically and strategically. No. It's a terrible thing. Because at the end of the day, it's a crime. He had no business responding that way. And so in doing so, all he's doing is feeding, he's feeding a stack of litany of crimes that are going to have to be they're going to have to be balanced when we get to the negotiating phase at the end. Everybody will have a very long memory. And this is where we are right now. And you can say that none of that stuff matters, and I can hear people say, none of that stuff's going to matter. Yeah, it's going to matter a lot. It's going to matter a lot because it's going to color how people negotiate when this is all said and done, and what we're actually going to get out of it. So, let's remind ourselves that's what this is all about. The Brits are doing this during this transition period between the Theresa May government. It's like these are all poison pills that the Theresa May's government are leaving Boris Johnson when he takes power next week, right? They've got bigger problems in that they have to figure out whether or not they're going to, whether or not Parliament's going to call for a general election. This could also extend this period of uncertainty where we have the British bureaucracy running amok because there's no sitting government. There's only at best there's a caretaker government. The British deep state can run amok during times like this, and it will, and it's going to get worse before it gets better. Expect the Brits to continue to saber rattle here, okay, and to try and force Trump's hand into a war with Iran. That's what everybody wants. That's what they want him to do, and he's trying mightily to not do so. And I have to give him credit for that. But if he falls for any of this stuff, he's an idiot. Because no one was hurt. There are no British citizens on this ship. It's a British flag ship. Doesn't mean anything. It's flag of convenience or whatever it is. It's not important. And at the end of the day, they seized one of Britain's ships, or one of Iran's ships. Everybody knows what the score is here. This is not a hard situation to negotiate down. But the people who done this don't want to negotiate. Now we're going to find out whether or not Donald Trump is actually serious. And because the Brits are doing it, Trump can't just order the Brits to give up the ship. That's the thing. This thing will now fester and will continue to be an issue for months now. Because it's the same thing with the Skripal incident. It's just because it happened in Britain, right? You get to use Britain as the cover for who the actual target is, and who the actual target is Trump. And U.S.-Russia relations. Well, if you put it in Britain, if you put the incident in Britain, you can't tell the British government to do anything. It's the same thing with pulling Julian Assange out of asylum. So it also helps to push Epstein out of the news for a couple of hours, sure, but it won't be for very long. So just fascinating to see how this is playing out. Oh, I noticed that Franz is back, and look at him. Look what he's saying. Tom's calling for surrender to Iran again. Oh, come on, Franz. Are you kidding me? Stop being such a fucking Canadian. Okay? I mean, seriously, stop being such an absolute and utter paid troll. I mean, you wearing your toque tonight? You happy? Is it cold in Canada tonight? It shouldn't be. Come on. Half the freaking trolls on Twitter are all Canadians. They're all paid for it. They're all Canadians. It's crazy. It brings shame to good Canadians. People should stop it. Give this stuff up. Masquerading as a neocon. I thought he was a Marxist anarchist. All right. So you got to remember that. So this is all poison pill stuff for Boris Johnson to deal with. Brexit is absolutely a mess right now as we watch the new leadership of the European Union take their jobs. But I think it's really funny, actually, that the Brits tried to sail this thing. I mean, the timing on this is that the ship was on its way through there, obviously. But that Iran decided to pull this ship out of the water a day after they sat down and started talking with Rand Paul, which I thought was a great move on Trump's part to bring Rand Paul into this, sideline John Bolton. You'll notice that John Bolton's not even making public statements anymore. So that guy's done. I mean, he's not out there making public statements. He's not out there saying anything important. So it's obvious. So it's obvious that Trump is trying to change the tenor and the course of his foreign policy. And he's trying to walk back from the edge of the abyss that he's got himself into. And the Brits aren't letting him do it. And that'll give you that should tell you even more what we're dealing with here. How absolutely and disgusting and how unutterably corrupt and frankly, as far as I'm concerned, treasonous the Theresa May government is in the UK. When it comes out, and I'm going to transition over to Brexit talk now, because you have to understand that I think these incidents have a lot to do with Brexit as well. But not in the way you're thinking, that this is like to distract from the fact that they're going to betray Brexit or anything. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with munging up the waters and keeping tensions high in order to try and burnish Jeremy Hunt, the current foreign secretary, to try and keep him in the job. That's one. If Boris Johnson does that, you can forget him ever taking the United Kingdom out on a no-deal Brexit, because that will never happen. Right. So you've got all these details about Jeffrey Epstein coming out at the same time, where, I mean, this thing went from Epstein, perv, Trump, Acosta to, is Epstein a Mossad agent? Who the fuck does this guy work for? I mean, this isn't a week. So it got to remember that too. There's a lot of people in the British government that are implicated in this thing, because it all ties into Russiagate, it all ties into Ukraine, it all ties into Manafort's dealings with Ukraine and all of that stuff. And guys like Lee Stranahan, of course, have a much better handle on all this than I do. And I'm not going to sit here and try and make all those connections for you tonight. That's not my job. My job is to connect this into what's going on with British politically. I just wrote an article this morning for my blog about this very thing, about what I think is going on. And I was reading an article by Mike Shedlock the other day about the timeline, as published by the UK House of Commons, by the way, of the timeline that could be possible for them to actually call for a general election before Halloween. And they have like Monday or Tuesday, and then they're done. They've got like a day after Johnson is sworn in. They've got like a day or two window to call for a vote of no confidence and collapse the government and organize an election. Otherwise, there's no way they'll get a new parliament in that can actually seat before Halloween. It's literally that it's that tight a window. They have about 48 to 72 hours. That's it. That's all they got. And that's exactly what Nigel Farage was saying yesterday on his radio program. He's like, we'll know who Boris Johnson is within the first 48 hours. He was thinking in terms of the cabinet, but I'm thinking more in terms of what Parliament can and cannot do. So I just love the fact that you guys are now arguing over whether or not Franz is a good Canadian or not. I think that's just hilarious. I just threw it out there just to see it. randomly just to see if it would fucking fly. It's actually good. So this, you know, it's very easy for the British bureaucracy, the intelligence agencies, the military and whatnot, the British, for lack of a better term, the British deep state, to continue to amp up the provocations while the government's completely paralyzed by Brexit. And again, don't think that there's like a plan here or anything. They're all just reacting to this shit in real time. These people are completely screwed up. But as I was saying, Mike Sedlock, you know, that article that I read by Mike, you know, then started to clarify, well, where are we in this whole process? And the process is really interesting. I think the situation hasn't changed a bit since the European parliamentary elections. The Brexit party is polling strongly enough, and the the Tories are polling strongly enough now that they're likely to choose Johnson over Hunt. That, you know, that's the strongest two-party coalition as of current polling, and I think the current polling is probably biased down about 3 to 4 points, if you want my honest opinion. And it really doesn't matter in the aggregate anyway. It's going to come down to seats. And I think there's a very good chance that the Tories plus Brexit party would create a majority, and then we'll find out. And if that were the case, then we'll absolutely find out, you know, where Johnson's bread is buttered. And I got news for you. I'm with Nigel on this. I don't think in any way, matter, shape, or form, Johnson's a true Brexiteer. I don't. I think he likes the idea of power. That's it. But it's pretty obvious from what we found out this week that in all the discussions between Theresa May and the European Union, that she never once brought up the threat of a no-deal Brexit in all 2 years of negotiating the withdrawal treaty. And, you know, Michel Barnier was the one who floated this, and that's just a way to twist the knife on Theresa May on her way out the door. And to remind everybody that we're here because of this, and she's been completely spineless. I would say traitorous. You know, it's really treasonous behavior on her part to go to Brussels and kowtow the way she did, and to negotiate the way she did, with the EU's best interest at heart. You know, she ultimately, in the end of the day, negotiated a deal that gave them everything they wanted, and then she said, well, this is the best we're going to get. Well, no. You never once said, well, then we'll just fucking leave. At which point they'd all come running after her, no, don't leave, don't leave. You know, when there's just a threat of it from a procedural perspective, they were willing to bend over backwards for her. I had her pegged as the worst prime minister in British history 3 weeks after she took the office, by the way. So, all right, that's pretty much what I've got for the main topic tonight. I'm going to go back over the, but I wanted to remind you guys. So when you start thinking about the timeline for Brexit here, Johnson has to look like a committed Brexiteer for the next couple of months, regardless of whether there's going to be a general election or not, because Nigel Farage is nipping at his heels. You've got the Conservatives polling around 24-25%. You've got Brexit polling anywhere from 19 to 22%. And what I noted was that Brexit is absolutely now moving beyond Brexit as an issue and saying, okay, what are we going to do with all our savings? What are we going to do with all the good stuff after we've left? Go look up hashtag invest in the rest, and you'll see what I'm talking about. They're moving in that direction of saying, look, we have a solution for Britain. We're not just the Brexit party. We're not just the anti-EU guys who just want to stuff it up, just give two fingers up to the French. This is not what this is about. This is about what's the best for the United Kingdom, and they really are playing that to that crowd, which is why this could be a lot more than a flash in the pan, and could be a very big shift for them. And the last comment is to say that, look, it makes perfect sense, honestly, for Iran to jumping back to the original topic, for Iran to seize this British oil tanker. They made the threat. They had to go through with it. They just had to wait for the right moment to do so. And doing so while Zarif and, right after Zarif and Rand Paul. God, I wish it was Ron Paul. Had their talk and began the process of just creating a relationship between an American and an Iranian in an official capacity that has some trust, is a good sign. But Iran had to do this here. There's no doubt that they had to do it. So, all right. All right, I'm going to go back to the beginning of the comment threads. I'm going to and look at what we've got going on for now. All right, let's see. So Jonathan asked from the beginning, did the U.S. make up the story about shooting down the Iranian drone? It looks like it. I don't have any corroborative evidence any more than anybody else has. I haven't looked into it very carefully or whatnot, but it's pretty funny that Iran was out there going, oh no, by the way, you didn't. You're just lying to people. Stop lying. I would think it's really I think it's hilarious if the Iranians, if the Americans did that and then lied about it, and then, or even just shot down our own drone and then tried to blame Iran for it. And Iran was like, yeah, oh no way. No, stop that. Bad Trump, no biscuit. That's just funny. Tenjin says, hey, look, well, Iran may as well play hardball. We're never going to leave them alone anyway. Not until there's a substantive change in the White House. Not until there's a generational change in our Congress and in our and in the White House. As long as baby boomers are in charge, nobody's going anywhere. And I mean that from a bureaucracy standpoint, and I mean that from a Congress perspective, and from obviously from a presidential perspective. We have to start moving into honest to God Gen X. Like, we have to have a Gen X administration and a higher proportion of Gen X and millennials in Congress that, and in positions of power within Congress, that can then set the agenda differently and set the lobbying path differently. And again, that gets back into Jeffrey Epstein. And I think I think there's something going on here, and you know how I feel about this. I've talked about this in multiple live streams. I've written multiple articles about it. I believe that this is all Trump. And I believe that it's Trump retaliation against the deep state. And this is going to be his big move against the deep state. And we'll see how it plays out. He may fail, but I'll at least applaud him for stirring up the hornet's nest, because it needs to be done. Because once you start down this path, forever will dominate your destiny. No, once you start this thing going, like I said earlier, we went from Epstein is a pervert, Epstein is a pervert, Epstein is a pervert. He knows Trump. Epstein, Trump, Epstein, Trump, Epstein, Trump, Acosta. Epstein, Trump, Acosta. Epstein, Trump, 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 Acosta. Epstein, Trump, Trump, Acosta. Oh no. Oh, Acosta's gone. Epstein, Trump, Epstein, Trump, Epstein, Trump, Clinton, Epstein, Trump, Epstein, Trump, Epstein, Trump, 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 Epstein, Trump. Okay, we did this for a week. It didn't work. Now all of a sudden, is Epstein a fucking Mossad agent? Who does this guy work for? What the fuck is going on here? How does this guy have this much money? Okay, this thing immediately like balloons and blossoms into so many other things. Oh yeah, he's a perv too. But it's not as much about the perv now. Now it's about poking into other areas. This is something you can't ring fence when it's this big. Okay, this is whether, because Epstein's not the end of this. He's only the tip of it. It's something that's been going on for years. It's something that's been going on for, or you can argue, probably for generations. And when it's something like this is successful, the bigger the spider's web. Okay? The more people that are caught in the web. Well, at some point, the web gets too big to maintain. And it gets really, really big. And then it becomes impossible to hide because it's right in front of you. And the web is like everywhere. And you're like looking at it going, the Matrix. And it's everywhere. Now what? And once that starts, it never ends. Dragon M says, look, the British deep state is doing the work for the U.S. deep state by forcing Trump into a war for their clients, Saudi, Barbaria, and Israel. I'm not going to argue with you. I understand it. Yeah, the law, Patrick Vidian just says, look, that my comments about lawlessness are spot on. I thank you. I appreciate that. But he then asks, so what percentage of Americans do you think now know the truth about what's going on? Not nearly enough. It's better, not nearly enough, but it's getting there. Yeah, Trump is a war criminal now because of Syria. At least Clapper warned Obama, says Star Trooper. Yeah, you're right about that. So Dragon Raw said, hey, Tom, regardless of what's going on, I just want the Omar and the squad out of Congress. Well, good luck with that. They're there for at least another year and a half. Or 15 months or whatever the hell it is. Yeah, a year and a half. Well, I don't know that they'll be there for very, very much longer, but I think they're going to be there for as long as they can. And, you got to remember that they're terrible, but they're also doing everybody's, like, Paul Joseph Watson had a great video earlier this week about this, but I love Ilhan Omar. So did I. I realized that she was, I think we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. I said, look, the Zach Exley, Cenk Uygur, George Soros wing of the Democratic Party, wanting to take it over from within and destroy it by splitting it down the middle and forcing the old baby boomers to fight on turf that they don't want to fight on, is working perfectly into Trump's hands for re-election. They pushed the party so far to the left that, now Elizabeth Warren is going to be their standard bearer. Whoever is going to wind up coming out of it. I'm hoping for Warren, just because that would be the most entertaining of all races. Even though it will turn my stomach the entire time, I'll also be sick to death with all the fucking popcorn I'd be eating. So, oh man, I'm going to have to it would be really bad for my digestive tract, my autoimmune system. All right. Is Rand Paul still out there in Iran? He's never went to Iran. He visited Zarif in New York while Zarif was at the UN. So Zarif was given a limited visa so that he could actually come to New York and do his fucking job. So for once we acted like human beings. And then right after we did that, Trump sent Rand Paul over there. And I don't know how much longer Zarif's going to be in country, but you can imagine that they'll have more than one round of talks, even if they're not all public. North on 60 took umbrage with my with my France's Canadian troll statement. Morons like France do not represent me. Hey, I know they don't represent good Canadians either, but a lot of them are. It's really funny when you find out that a lot of these trolls really are Canadians being paid $12 an hour by Soros. Pretty sad. The Brits are not our friend or ally. The British deep state is neither anybody's friend nor anyone's ally. They are their own. They are treacherous, backstabbing scum, says Jonathan Gillespie. Of course, I'm referring to the British government, not the people. Well, it is. It's the British deep state. North on 60, the UK has always been a toxic cesspool of corruption and nastiness. Not the normal people, the government. Yeah, well, the government's been corrupt for hundreds of years. Nothing new. So user 13 brings up the point that Epstein appears to be Mossad, or at least peripheral to them. His girlfriend's dad was, for sure. She's talking about Robert Maxwell and his girlfriend being Ghislaine Maxwell, and God knows if she was his girlfriend or just his partner in pedophilia. I guess when you're that guy, girlfriend is as good an appellation as anything, I guess. Okay, if the U.S. deep state doesn't arcanicide him, the Israelis probably will. I can't see how they let him cut a deal. No, I don't see how they let him cut a deal either. He'll never go to trial. They'll hold him in abeyance under a gag order, just like they're holding Manafort, just like they held Martin Armstrong for 8 years. Suddenly, like the Mullahs in Iran. Dude, how fucking bad are you that you spelled Mueller as opposed to Mullah? No one likes the Mullahs, but no one likes the Mullahs in an objective sense. But I like the Mullahs when they're standing up to the people who actually run the world badly here in the West and are doing a terrible job of keeping the world from being anything other than on the verge of fucking nuclear war. I'm sorry. I'm like, that's not cool. We're the aggressors here. That's the way it is. And that's that. And, I can't believe I'm actually responding to Franz, other than the fact that he spelled Mullahs like he spelled Robert Mueller. I love it. That's just like, that's classically Canadian. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. I love Canadians. I really do. Come on. Most of my favorite people in the world are Canadian. It does appear, says Patrick Vidian, that the UK branch of the cabal have an enormous influence on the evil agenda that's going on. I didn't realize the Crown was so influential, almost pulling the strings. It's really terrible. And then MI5/MI6, terrible. It's all really, really bad. What was the first indication of her being a disaster? The fact, God, I can't honestly go back that long. I can't go back that long. I just knew from the beginning that she wasn't anybody's first choice and she came out of nowhere. It's kind of like Ursula von der Leyen as the head of the European Union. She was placed in power after a throne war to ensure that a Brexiteer was not put in charge. So what was the first indication? She was a fucking Remainer. Yeah, Patrick, you have very, very deep, seated problems in the UK. So do we. I'm not saying that. As if like we're the paragons of excellence or anything. Because fuck, we're even more messed up. You've got a lot of work to do, but because of the way your electoral system works, you can actually get a People's Party to rise up out of freaking nowhere and change something. We can't. Our ballot access laws at the state level are so fucking onerous. There's no way you can start a political party in the United States and actually have it get anywhere. You have to take it over. You have to either take it over from when or completely opt out and then secede. Tenjin reminds Jonathan that out of the gate, she signaled her role was to drag her feet on Brexit as much as possible. That was her sole mission. Baby boomers used to love peace, as long as it was at the point of a gun. As long as it was their version of peace. Remember, the prophet generation always gets this way when they get older. Right? In the Strauss and Howe model of things, the prophet generation, which is the baby boomers, always become strident, didactic moralists when they get older. They're all for, pushing the ball forward and changing the culture, quote unquote, for the better. But, if you couldn't see that moralistic not moralistic, but if you couldn't see that radical Marxist hippies from the 60s weren't going to turn into didactic moralists when they got older, and we're going to take we're in charge now, we're in power, and we know what to do, and we're the goodies, we've always been the goodies, and we're going to make the world better by forcing it to be. You didn't see that coming. You didn't understand the baby boomers. Gen X and millennials are worse. We're in a spiral circling the drain. What the Gen X and the millennials are is they are not wedded to Israel. The more you dig into this Jeffrey Epstein thing, the more you realize that this is the main mechanism by which Israel exerts its influence over the United States government and probably over the British government and many others as well. Okay? It really is about that. And the one thing we discuss in here all the time is that, look, for better or for worse, Gen X and the millennials have no love for Israel whatsoever. They, both generations kind of look at the whole shit over in the Middle East and go, they've been fighting our entire lives. What the fuck are we doing this for? We're broke. Our parents ignored the fucking shit out of us while we were growing up. And we're broke now. And again, that's what Gen X is saying. You people all fucking ignored us when you went and burned your fucking bras and got high at fucking Woodstock. And now you're the world's biggest cheerleaders for fucking Israel while you ignored us. Fuck a whole lot of you. And the millennials are sitting there going, you people paid how much freaking money and bankrupted the fucking country? And I can't even like get out of my parents' basement for fuck's sake. And you want me to like spend billions of dollars a year on some fucking shithole in the Middle East? What the fuck are we doing? And they look at like 27 bases circling Iran going, yeah, bring them home. It's only the baby boomers that won't stop this. It's only the freaking, it's only these old Cold Warriors who won't stop this stuff. It's, Patrick, baby boomers here in the United States, you're British. I'm talking specifically about American baby boomers. And as a generation, their imprint is different. Of course, there are good and bad. Of course, there are fine. I know many fine baby boomers, and I know a lot of fucking shit lib Gen Xers. But in general, the trends of the generations, hard to argue with. It's hard to argue with. Because that's what actually shapes public policy when you live in a fucking democracy, which is the shittiest form of government. Oh, that was a period. There wasn't a comma. All right. Durkheim says, is a bear shit in the woods? Yeah, of course Epstein is Mossad. His woman is the daughter of Robert Maxwell, a known Mossad agent. Yes. Yeah. And so... Yeah, so tension, and so everyone's talking about Ilhan Omar saying, well, at least she calls out AIPAC. Yes. That's her job. It's just like this touch on all the third rails of politics and then force Pelosi into having to redefine her position and having to constantly put her on the defensive. Omar is a genuine person. Yeah, she's an idiot and she's an ideologue, but she's genuine about it. Called out the Israeli lobby and basically called Obama a war criminal, which is great. Yeah, that is true. That is true. No, I mean, Jonathan makes the point is he's honestly embarrassed to agree with her about anything. No, you shouldn't be. These people are tools for you. When they say the right things, the things that you agree with, you should praise them. When they do stupid shit that you don't like, you should lambaste them. It's just that simple. They're not people you know. They're not people you care about. They're not part of your community. They're not part of your fucking family. None of that shit. Countries are fucking fictions anyway. So now we get into like remember, become the radical libertarian, at least for like a little while, and just remember that countries are fictions. They're these things that we create in our minds, the borders, all this shit. It's all crap that we create in our minds in order to order the world. Okay? At the end of the day, it's still just you trying to make your way in a world that's hostile to your existence in it. Never forget that. And always, always argue from that perspective, and always treat these people as nothing more than tools for you, for what you want. Yeah, no, we didn't create this. Tension saying, as a Gen Xer, I'll admit my generation has many faults, and we do, absolutely. But we didn't cause the downward spiral, neither did the millennials. No, we didn't. This is all the baby boomers. They're broke. They spent all the fucking money. They spent their grandkids in the freaking debtor's prison. Okay? Why aren't people en masse screaming for Jeffrey Epstein's execution? It's a good question. The great Brett Harris is in the house, reminding us that Bill Browder worked for Robert Maxwell just before his accident. Yeah. We must support our troops and bring them home now. Exactly, Mark Scheer. Support the troops. Bring them home now. Stop spending the money on that. The Democrats had half a brain among them. They'd nominate Tulsi Gabbard and let her lose to Trump, but she'd lose to Trump honorably. So North on 60, Hayes says, oh, look, I'm Gen X and we are testy and disillusioned. Hi, testy and disillusioned, but extremely entrepreneurial and productive once we got our minds made up to do something. Welcome to this channel. It took me 45 years to figure out what the fuck I wanted to do with my life. So you're saying that the drugs, rock and roll generation found Jesus or Solomon? Wasn't religious liberation their way of life? No, they found their religion. Their religion is the planet, and no restraints on their behavior. They found their Jesus. It's called government. Okay, that's the point. It's called government. Most of the boomer neocons were draft dodgers during the Vietnam War. That's absolutely true. I'm a 70-year-old baby boomer, and I'm dedicated to peace and justice today as I was in the 60s. Just a lot smarter about what is really going on than back then. I agree, and I'll remind you, there are a lot of shit libs in my generation. Half of them are my friends. Okay, there's no accounting for that. I know it is what it is, and we're all want peace and justice in this world. Define peace and justice, right? I argue this point all the time. This is the whole generational stuff. Don't take me too seriously about this, but like how to put this, because it was just in my head and then I lost it. The generational stuff is not as important ultimately as it is the definition of what is and is not the right solution to the problem. We can all see what the problems are. Specification. I say this all the time. There's the big difference between specification, specifying what the problem is, and implementing a solution. Right? Those two things are not the same thing. We conflate them all the time. And bad argumentative and invariably all internet discussion comes down to conflating specification and implementation. Okay? Those are the problems, right? So you got specification on the one hand, you got implementation on the other. Okay? And you got to figure out what to do. We all know what the fucking problem is. The goddamn bankers run the world. They're a fucking problem. How do we get rid of them? How do we get rid of the war profiteers? How do we get rid of these people? How do we remove them from power? Well, libertarians would say devolve power back to the people. Slowly but surely, at every moment, at every turn, whenever you get the opportunity to, devolve power back to the people. Take the power away from them. Don't give the bureaucracy the ability to write rules that circumscribe your life. No. You take control, you take responsibility. That means taking responsibility as well as having the authority. As opposed to ceding the authority and not taking the responsibility. What the baby boomers did is they ceded the responsibility to government or they ceded the authority to the government and then didn't claim to be responsible for what happened. That's who they are as a generation. That's their legacy as a generation. Now, not every baby boomer, of course, just like not every American is a fat, slovenly pig, right? Okay, fine. But, come on. This is the thing. Not every, it's like, you can't make that argument. So it's important to understand it as a when you look at the way policy has been shaped as the generations have passed through government. Okay, the big thing that you can see is, especially among these baby boomers, was that they rejected God. They were really the first generation to reject God, and then they substituted God. They substituted the state for God because everybody needs a religion. Everybody needs a religion, and if you reject one religion, you'll go and find another one. It doesn't matter. Everybody's searching for something. Everybody needs something, and when you don't have anything, you become nihilistic. And Jordan Peterson talks about this shit all the time. So does everybody else on the internet. Never forget that. And I look at the baby boomers as a generation, and they're very nihilistic. And substituting God and substituting the state for God was a huge mistake. And I think that that's something that we're going to have to hit rock bottom with as a society. The Russians already went through it. Chinese already went through it. They're in transition to something different. Tweety Bird says, have you read Michael Hudson's book on Jubilee and debt forgiveness for the 99%? No, but I've listened to Steve Keen enough, and I've listened to Jim Rickards enough, and I agree with that. A lot of that stuff needs to be done. But that would entail crashing the entire financial system and watching everybody who currently has power lose 90% of their wealth and hand it back to the 99% that they stole it from. Got news for you. That's not going to happen. Not going to happen. Nihilism is the opposite of religion, Archvault. It is. It's the opposite of believing in anything. Religion is a belief in something. It's a belief in some kind of order to the universe, and some kind of purpose and meaning in your life. Nihilism is the belief that nothing matters. Nihilism. I'm sorry. I didn't say God. I said religion. Big difference. Okay? Star Wars is a fucking religion. Okay? It's an ethos. You know, as in the great word, in the immortal words of Walter Sobchak, say what you want about National Socialism, dude, at least it was an ethos. And they put that line of dialogue in the mouth of a guy who's supposedly a Jew. I mean, or who, you know, a converted Jew. I mean, are you fucking kidding me? It's not splitting hairs. It's very important. No, it's not very important. It's not splitting hairs. Spirituality and God are two completely different things. The religion is a human institution. Another line from a great Coen Brothers movie. I was pardoned by himself. It was signed by the governor himself. I was pardoned. It was signed by the governor himself. It's the law. And the sheriff looks back at Ulysses and says, law is a human institution. Implying that you are guilty of crimes that have nothing to do with a piece of paper. And it's only when he apologizes for everything that he's saved. Spirituality. Go watch all the Coen Brothers movies. They're all about this. They're absolutely all about this. Every one of them, almost every one of them that I've watched. I start to really think about the Coen Brothers movies. They're all about this. Certainly Hail Caesar is. Maybe not like Burn After Reading or Intolerable Cruelty or so some of the lighter ones, but you know, the big ones, the important ones, they're all about sin and salvation. Yeah, it's like tensions. I was about to quote The Big Lebowski too. I know, I love it. Humanism is another way of you know, look, I'm not a huge fan of secular humanism. I'm not. I get it, but every secular humanist I've ever met who wound up being who came to libertarianism from that perspective didn't last. Didn't last. I've just always said one thing. I'm not smart enough to know what the answers are. I don't know how the universe works. I don't know. I'm not willing to say that there is or is not a God. But what's important, and this is the important thing, is it's not about the ism. Now we get back to Ferris Bueller. There's a problem with the world is all the isms. I don't like isms. Right? And I can remember he makes the quote about the walrus, which I can't remember. I wish I could remember the dialogue because it was really good. But you guys know what I'm talking about. When it's in the shower talking about these things. And it's not about isms. But what you believe. And it's about being smart enough to know that you don't have the answers, and therefore acting as if God exists is just as important as whether or not God exists or not. What you do, what your ethos is, and how you treat people is all that's important. You can make the non-aggression principle into your God. It'll work for you. Pretty good. I don't know that it's enough, but it's pretty good. Worked for me for an awfully long time. I dabbled in all of it. I just say, look, I don't claim to be a member of any kind of religion. Period. Go to church. I'm not moved when I walk into a Catholic church. Never moved by a mass. I haven't been moved by a mass in my entire life. The only time I was ever moved by any kind of truly any kind of Catholic symbolism was I went to visit St. Patrick's in New York. I was just like stunned by how beautiful the place was. That's not to say that I don't understand why people believe in it. I absolutely understand it. And I absolutely respect it. And as should you and everybody else. There's no reason why we shouldn't respect what people do in the name of trying to make sense of a universe, again, hostile to your existence in it. It's true. As long as you don't step on anybody else's toes while you're doing it. The people who run this world believe in only one thing. They are Marxists. They believe in power. That's it. They have no God. They're not doing this for a higher purpose. Power is all that matters to them. They see the world in those terms, and they act accordingly. And you'll never convince them otherwise. And I don't believe people like Mike Pompeo when they say that they're Christians. I don't believe it. St. Patrick's Cathedral in New York is absolutely gorgeous. It's like the only place in New York I would recommend you go to New York for. It's gorgeous. It's stunning. It was so stunning. I wrote about it right after I got done. I was in New York for a week or so on like Christmas break. I think Camille and I and my best friend from high school, we went down to New York for a day. You know, because Camille had never been to New York City, so I took her to New York City, and you know, we got bagels and knishes and walked around Manhattan, and you know, we went to St. Patrick's Cathedral, and that was that. Friends, when you believe in nothing but power, you are a Marxist. That is like textbook fucking Marxist doctrine. Capitalism has nothing to do with that. Capitalism is not an ism. Capitalism is an economic system. Marxism is a fucking religion. And the religion is power. It's nihilistic, it's short-sighted, it's evil, and it's aggressive. You don't understand. And this is the problem with the modern left. They don't even understand what they fucking believe. Yeah, with Foucault. That's fine. They're all Marxists. They are. Doesn't matter who it came in with. Like, why are we splitting hairs about this? They took their fucking doctrine from Marx in the first place. They used it. Foucault used all of that theory in order to prove why Marx was right. So, why else would they do that if they were not fucking Marxists? Please. Don't. This is what we're talking about. Splitting fucking hairs. Give me a fucking break. Juan Isaac, I respect other religions. I just don't appreciate being converted by force. No one appreciates being converted by force. No one likes being forced to do anything. I.e. jihadists and cultural Marxists. Exactly. Because splitting hairs is healthy and fun, says Arkvault. All right. We're coming up on an hour. And the USA was founded by Masons, but now the Catholics rule. I just don't care. You know, that at that level, you got to understand is that some of this stuff, I watch like all these things playing out. I just look at it and go, yeah, but the whole system's collapsing. Okay? And when the system collapses as hard as this one's going to collapse, it's a 300+ year event. And everything that we think we know about how the world operates changes. Everything changes. Everything. And none of these isms are going to survive in their current form. None of them. None of them. Not even libertarianism. Tension says, I went to a Jesuit school. Those guys are too dumb to run anything. Feel that way about most Marxists. It could be such a beautiful world, says Patrick Vidian. It's time to sort out the shit that's going on. No need to fear. We all live on after corporeal death. You know, I certainly hope you're right. I'm not convinced that that's the truth, but I certainly hope you're right, because it's certainly a fuckload better version of the world than the one I have in my head. But I like to act as if what I do on this planet matters. I still think that even if it doesn't, even if we don't, the legacy we leave behind us is important. It just is. Because at the end of the day, you know, I give a fuck who shows up to my funeral. Call me egotistical, call me narcissistic, call me all those things. Fuck you. I care. I want to know. I'm not going to know, but I want to know that, you know, I made enough of an imprint on the world that people will miss me while I'm gone. I can do it with humility. And even do it with a little bit of humor. Every once in a while. Good evening, Edward Abbey. How are you? Tuning in for the last tail end of the show, which is completely off base from where we started tonight. Oh, by the way, going to listen in later on Walkabout the Lake, hoping 2 baby swan out of 8 hatched over Memorial Day weekend are still alive and healthy. Well, I hope you too. We all long for the transcendent, says User 13. You goddamn right we do. You goddamn right we do. Suspect it was a snapping turtle. Oof. Yeah, knife. All right, guys. Appreciate all the comments, as always. Appreciate your time. Appreciate all of it. FYI, will be no stream on Monday night. Not just because it's not a holiday or anything else. I will be on the road. And if I make it into the resort up in New Mexico that we're going to, my first thought after driving for more than a day will not be, hey, I'm late for my live stream. It's just not going to happen. I will try and do some while I'm on vacation, probably ad hoc, maybe during the day, maybe during the evening. We'll see. So just make sure that your notification bell is turned on and all that happy jazz. But I will be around. So, but not as much as I normally am. All right, so you guys take care. I'm going to be out as of Sunday morning. I'm on the road and I will be gone until so you will not see this until after, say, August 3rd or so. All right, you guys take care. You have a great night. We'll talk soon. Keep your stick on the ice.